Greetings. I am Leah, age 22. You may question how a girl of my age resides with her uncle, particularly given the circumstances I am going to describe, but rest assured, this is an outcome I never anticipated either. I am pursuing a career in graphic design, dedicating the most of my time to drawing, designing, and engaging in freelancing projects. Life has not consistently been facile for me since my parents' divorce. In my youth, I frequently relocated in search of clarity. Ultimately, I found myself residing with my Uncle Jonathan. The move was unexpected. The events transpired when my mother relocated for employment, necessitating my search for accommodation while I completed my college education. Jonathan, my uncle, was the sole family member capable of providing me shelter. He has been married to his wife, Beatrice, for several years. They possess an attractive residence in the rural area, distant from the urban center. I anticipated the relocation would resemble previous ones, characterized by a tranquil and serene environment, but the reality diverged significantly from my expectations. This leads me to the present day. Several months have elapsed since my relocation, and I have acclimated to this environment. I believed I had embraced the tranquility and monotony of this place, but today feels distinct. I am composing this because an incident occurred, one that began when I entered Jonathan's room while he was asleep. Prior to recounting the events, please ensure you subscribe to the channel to remain informed about forthcoming facts. Firstly, I would like to provide you with additional details about Jonathan. Uncle Jonathan transcends the typical role of an uncle. He has consistently served as a mentor rather than merely a familial figure. During my upbringing, he taught me how to ride a bicycle and perform home repairs. He also gifted me my first automobile for my 18th birthday. Therefore, when my mother needed a place to stay during her business trip, he was the obvious choice. He is not the typical uncle who only shows up during holidays. Although Jonathan is kind, patient, and exceptional, I was moving in with him and his wife, Beatrice, who had been involved for some time. They got married 2 years ago, and at first, I harbored reservations about Beatrice. She was older than Jonathan, and there was a subtle aloofness that consistently maintained a distance between us, making me feel like an outsider in their intimate sphere. I initially resided in the guest room located at the far end of the house. I endeavored to minimize my interference, allowing them their privacy. Nonetheless, the tension between Beatrice and me gradually diminished, particularly when she began offering me advice on culinary tasks, cleaning, and typical domestic matters. My rapport with her was not as harmonious as with Jonathan. However, the tension has diminished, and life seems to be returning to normalcy. Over the past few months, my bond with Jonathan has strengthened. His presence is reassuring. He listens without prejudice and is perpetually ready to assist. We frequently share evenings, engaging in conversation over dinner or unwinding in the living room. Recently, I have observed an inexplicable shift in our dynamic. What began as a transient emotion gradually intensified as we spent more time together, leading me to recognize an inappropriate attraction towards him. His smiles, the occasional brush of his hand against mine, and the furtive glances he cast my way when he presumed I was unaware. All of these interactions felt distinct from previous experiences. It is challenging to articulate, yet I could not dismiss it. I was uncertain if he perceived it, but I sensed a palpable tension developing between us, an inescapable energy. I understand you may be thinking, Leah, what are you saying? He is your uncle. I acknowledge the absurdity, yet this feeling, this undeniable pull between us, persists. I attempt to dismiss it, convincing myself that it is all my imagination. Yet, Whenever we are alone, the atmosphere seems denser, as if an unseen force is drawing us nearer. This brings me back to the present moment right after dinner. While engaged on a project in my room, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Jonathan had been sleeping for some hours, and Beatrice was absent. She departed with friends, leaving us solitary for the evening. Initially, I dismissed it, but upon hearing the door to his bedroom open, I became immobilized. I experienced a moment of doubt. I was uncertain whether to enter or allow him to rest. However, my curiosity prevailed. I desired to converse with him. Perhaps it was the implicit tension that drew me to him. I discreetly opened the door, attempting to avoid disturbing him. He lay there, supine, one arm positioned behind his head, his face serene in slumber. The gentle illumination from the window created shadows on his face, rendering him serene and quite ethereal. I remained there for several moments, my heart pounding. I sensed the pulsation of blood in my ears and the warmth ascending in my cheeks. I had never experienced such feelings previously. I was uncertain about my desires, maybe merely to observe him, or perhaps I sought something deeper. I don't know how long I stood there, but I interrupted my contemplation when I accidentally knocked a small vase off the shelf behind his bed. The noise caused Jonathan to awaken. His eyelids opened, and for a fleeting moment, our eyes met. I observed the bewilderment in his eyes. However, there was an additional element present, which I could not fully identify. He blinked many times, attempting to concentrate on me, and then emitted a subdued, lethargic laugh. "Leah, what are you doing in this location?" he inquired, his voice still laden with drowsiness. I felt my heart pounding in my chest as I endeavored to formulate a response. I aimed to avoid appearing intrusive. However, I was uncertain about how to convey my actions. My mouth was dry, and I couldn't think of anything to say. "I did not intend to disturb your sleep," I faltered, abruptly experiencing embarrassment. Jonathan gradually sat up, massaging his eyes. He regarded me with a gentle smile, the same one he typically displayed at moments of patience. However, now there was an unusual intensity in his gaze that caused my heart to race. He appeared to scrutinize me for a moment before speaking again. "It is acceptable." He spoke in a tone gentler than normal. "Leah, you are always welcome to converse with me. I am available to assist you." I accepted. However, my thoughts were tumultuous. I was uncertain about how to manage the emotion within me. The atmosphere in the room was oppressive, and I sensed my respiration accelerating. I merely wished to converse. I whispered my words. Jonathan's smile diminished somewhat, and for a fleeting second, I perceived a glimmer of uncertainty in his eyes. However, it vanished immediately. He begged for me to sit next to him on the bed. "Approach me, and you may converse with me at any time." He repeated his words, his tone warm and inviting. I hesitated momentarily, uncertain of my next action. Yet an internal impetus compelled me to advance, and before I could deliberate, I approached and seated myself. The tension between us was evident, now more pronounced than ever, alongside him. I sensed the warmth of his body adjacent to mine, and the faint aroma of his perfume permeated the atmosphere. We were so close that I could hear his breathing and feel his chest rise and fall with each inhalation. My heart raced once more, and then, as in slow motion, I gazed up at him. Our faces were in such proximity that I could perceive his warmth. His stare was gentle, nearly hesitant, yet there was an additional quality that caused my skin to tingle. He subdued his voice before I could respond with my lips. They separated, and instinctively I began to get closer to him. I felt the blood surge to my face, and my heartbeat appeared excessively loud in my ears. What was my activity? What transpired between us? I couldn't express it, but everything felt intensely overwhelming, as if an unmistakable energy permeated the atmosphere around us. Jonathan remained stationary, his gaze probing mine with a subdued intensity that reflected the turmoil within me. He remained silent, yet I could sense his breath quickening in tandem with mine. The room suddenly felt more temperate. The quiet between us was laden with unarticulated sentiments. My ideas were disordered. All events culminated in this moment, this unpredictable and unexplained instant. I found it increasingly difficult to control myself. I leaned in, my lips shaking as they made contact with his. His lips met mine with softness and gentleness, unleashing a flood of emotions. My head urged me to withdraw while my body resisted. I required this, I desired this, but I was unable to attain it. Cease further denial. Jonathan's gentle and firm hand rested on my cheek, cradling it tenderly and drawing me nearer. His other hand lay on the bed adjacent to his fingers, gently brushing over my flesh. I could perceive the warmth of his contact. His touch ignited a sensation on my skin. The kiss intensified, blurring the distinction between his lips and mine. All external realities beyond this chamber become non-existent. Only the two of us were present. We were entangled in an inescapable bond. My thoughts were engulfed in perplexity, guilt, and an overpowering sense of righteousness. What were our activities? What was the reason for it? I felt an overwhelming necessity that defied verbal articulation and lacked logical justification. He momentarily broke the kiss, resting his forehead gently against mine. Our breathing became labored, each inhale unsteady and each exhale measured. I could sense his pulse against my skin, mirroring the erratic cadence of my own heart. "Leah," he uttered softly, his voice strained with deeper emotions. We shouldn't proceed, but I was uncertain of my agreement. An internal force compelled me to disregard any rationale for cessation. Gradually, I reached for his hand, intertwining my fingers with his. He did not withdraw. Instead, his fingers curled around mine, as if he were clinging to me as fervently as I was to him. Our gazes intersected once more, and for an extended duration, silence enveloped us. The weight of everything that lay between us, the unspoken question, lingered in the air. Should we be able to? My hand instantly grasped the nape of his neck, drawing him closer and kissing him once again. This time, there was no hesitation, no fear, no uncertainty, only the need to be near him to feel Jonathan's hand. Jonathan's hand glided down my back, drawing me closer to the contact of our bodies, intensifying the experience immeasurably. I was unaware of our destination, yet it was of no concern to me. The moment was all that mattered, along with the desire to stay in this world where only we existed. My heart accelerated, thumping against my chest, as his lips traversed to my neck, bestowing gentle kisses over my flesh. I sensed his breath near my ear, causing a chill to traverse my spine. It was an unprecedented sensation, intimate, all-consuming, and profoundly inappropriate in the most favorable sense. "Are you certain about this?" he murmured against my skin, his voice laden with desire. "I do not wish to harm you." I closed my eyes, attempting to articulate my thoughts. Everything within me urged me to retreat, yet I was unable to resist. The yearning was overwhelming, the necessity too potent. I sought to abandon rationality, desiring solely to be with him. "I am certain," I whispered, my hands gliding over his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingertips. "I want this, Jonathan. I want you." His lips found mine once more, and this kiss was deeper, more urgent. There was no turning back. The outside world vanished, leaving only a sensation of desire and need that energized me in a way I had never felt before. The room appeared to constrict around us, the illumination fading as the profundity of our connection intensified. Each touch and kiss conveyed a commitment to an inexplicable depth, which we were both eager to investigate. I sensed his heartbeat, steady and assured, aligning with my own rhythm. Although a portion of me resisted the reality of the situation, a significantly greater portion capitulated entirely. Our interaction transcended mere kissing. It evolved into something greater. It constituted a relationship. I was unable to articulate a connection that transcended verbal expression, transcending elucidations. I have desired this for an extended period. Jonathan murmured gently, his breath warm against my lips. I struggled to understand his words, while my hands explored his body, sensing the muscles in his chest, the warmth of his skin, and his reactions to my touch. But there was no retreat at this point. There existed an undeniable attraction between us, an unexpected magnetism that rendered time irrelevant as we immersed ourselves in one another amidst the serene cadence of our kisses and the warmth of our caresses. For the first time, everything felt harmonious in the tranquil stillness of the room. We were no longer merely uncle and niece. We had become two individuals bound by a profound connection, one far more intense than anything I had previously experienced. The atmosphere between Jonathan and myself was laden with anxiety, with neither of us moving or communicating. The sound of the front door opening downstairs abruptly broke the silence, causing both of us to freeze. My heart raced, and I swiftly withdrew from Jonathan Panic, who was grasping me. What have we just accomplished? What transpired between us? Shame enveloped me, yet it entwined with an undeniable need. I sensed its burden. Jonathan remained motionless, initially due to the tension between our recent exchange and the complex reality of our profound entanglement, which was not easily resolved. Jonathan fixed his gaze on me, his face enigmatic. I sensed the warmth between us, the persistent intimacy that had not yet vanished. Leah muttered, his voice strained. Nevertheless, before he could articulate further, the sound of footfall reverberated up the stairs. A voice called out, "Jonathan." I immediately sensed my heart plummeting into my gut. It was a Beatrice dot. I swiftly dismounted the bed, my breath manifesting in rapid, shallow gasps. I was uncertain about how to proceed. My thoughts surged in several directions, yet I was unable to formulate a coherent response. I intended to confront her following the recent events. The door to Jonathan's room creaked open, revealing Beatrice, who stood in the doorway with a look of surprise on her face. Her gaze shifted between Jonathan and myself, bewilderment evident on her face as she assessed the situation. "Leah, Jonathan, what is occurring here?" she inquired, her tone imbued with doubt, yet accompanied by a sense that something was amiss. I sensed the color drain from my face. Beatrice's presence was like a frigid deluge. Suddenly, everything seemed amiss. It was impossible to elucidate or rationalize the recent occurrence between Jonathan and me. My throat tightened, making it challenging for me to express myself. I faltered, uncertain of how to respond. Jonathan, now seated on the bed with a vacant gaze, was equally perplexed. He stroked the nape of his neck, evidently ashamed, yet uncertain how to articulate his thoughts. Whether Beatrice's gaze turned toward him or returned to me, an unarticulated comprehension existed between us, a matter neither of us was prepared to address. In that singular moment, everything transformed. Beatrice sensed an unforeseen occurrence, but her response was unexpected. Her eyes reflected a profound, disquieting sorrow rather than anger or disappointment. She entered the room, shutting the door behind her. Her presence dominates the space. An unusual tranquility enveloped the room, reminiscent of the quiet preceding a tempest. "Leah, it is imperative that you comprehend this matter," Beatrice spoke gently. Her voice sounded unexpectedly soft. "This is more complex than you comprehend, more than any of you grasp." I observed her, overwhelmed by confusion. What was her intention? What other information existed? The silence in the room became more oppressive following Beatrice's departure. Her remarks had made a lasting impression on us both, and although bewilderment persisted, her comprehension and willingness to provide instruction had bestowed upon me an unforeseen benefit. Expectation. Beatrice was not irate. She was not prepared to discard us. She was providing us an opportunity. This appeared to be a tenuous and ambiguous opportunity. Nonetheless, it remains present. I observed Jonathan. His expression remained a blend of remorse, uncertainty, and an indefinable emotion. He averted my sight, his hands anxiously rubbing together. I understood he bore the burden of our unforeseen and intricate convergence. However, upon more reflection, I recognized that none of this had been intentional. Events had transpired beyond our control. The only certainty was that we could not ignore it or pretend nothing had happened. Beatrice was correct regarding that matter. The emotions and the confusion need confrontation and resolution. There was no evading it, Jonathan, I murmured, my voice quivering slightly. What are our next steps? Jonathan gazed upward, his eyes brimming with a blend of emotions. I am unfamiliar with Leah. I am uncertain about my emotions and thoughts. I am uncertain whether to feel anger, humiliation, or if I am permitted to experience any emotions whatsoever. His voice trembled with fragility, revealing the deep conflict inside his words. He was a man conflicted between the profound bond we had established and his sense of devotion. He had to leave a legacy for his wife, my aunt. We couldn't settle this issue in just one conversation. The situation was not straightforward. I inhaled deeply and approached him. The space between us gradually concluded. I intended to contact him to embrace him, although I was uncertain if it was appropriate. I felt uncertain about what was correct any longer. I believe we will not resolve everything at this moment, I stated gently, but it is essential that we engage in an honest conversation. This is excessively intricate to disregard. Gradually, his demeanor shifted to serious, though not hostile. I understand, but I am uncertain where to begin. I stepped closer, my heart racing, yet my voice remained composed. We commence by acknowledging what transpired, our emotions, and what we continue to feel, and then we determine the subsequent course of action. He nodded again, his expression softening slightly. This will not be facile, Leah, but I desire to comprehend what is unfolding between us. I grasped his hand, the contact both reassuring and charged with unexpressed feelings. I lack all the answers, Jonathan. I am unsure of what follows, but I will no longer evade this. We remained silent for a minute, each absorbed in our thoughts, attempting to comprehend the intricate complexity of the situation. A definitive path was absent, devoid of a guide to navigate the labyrinth of emotions, remorse, and uncertainty. Yet, Beatrice provided us with a semblance of a lifeline, the liberty to tackle this collectively and address the intricate, entangled web of feelings that ensnared us. I observed Jonathan once more. Our eyes met, and in that instant, I realized that whatever transpired next, we would confront it with sincerity. There was no ideal solution or simple remedy, yet there existed an opportunity for healing, comprehension, and perhaps something greater. My mind flooded with possibilities as I reclined, and Beatrice inevitably came to mind. Her calm parental direction had revealed a previously unknown gateway. She had not declined our proposal. She had not denounced us. Instead, she provided us the space to navigate the intricacies of past events. But what would transpire subsequently? What would Beatrice say if we expressed the depth of our enduring feelings? Would it be excessive? Will she ever genuinely forgive us? But we'll save those questions for another time. At this moment, just Jonathan and I remained in the quiet of our mutual uncertainty, certain that nothing would ever revert to its previous state. Our one option was to proceed to the next stage, whatever it entailed, and collectively we would devise a solution.